first, let's take a look at the latest scenes from Kabul. Barbed wire has now been put up outside the walls of Kabul airport, but it hasn't stopped people climbing the walls to try to get into the airport and onto the runway. Earlier, people rushed onto the tarmac and tried to climb onto moving military aircraft. And there are unconfirmed reports that at least 7 people died at the airport. Well, people were also seen trying to board commercial flights. They have since been suspended as well. Well, US troops trying to secure the airport fired shots into the air to try to prevent hundreds of people running onto the runways. One official described the crowd as out of control. Meanwhile, away from the airport on the streets of Kabul, the Taliban have set up security checkpoints. They're halting traffic and checking inside cars. Well, let's go live to Kabul and talk to our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey there. Stuart, first of all, tell us more about those scenes we've been witnessing today at the airport.
Yeah, absolute chaos, isn't it? And it's obviously resulted in the suspension of this whole airlift, and it's going to put it back because commercial flights can't come in either, even if they were able to get some control. We've heard shooting pretty much throughout today, and helicopter gunships above us. The shooting, we understand, was actually Afghan forces trying to shoot over the heads of people to get them to go away from the gates of the airport. We saw the Taliban there as well, trying to push people away, shooting. One person we saw being shot at after they had got through the barricades. And, of course, those incredible pictures on the runway and of people jumping onto planes and so basically while they're still moving. Incredible scenes and absolutely incredible chaos. Now, obviously, something had to be done. So, as you said, they've put over the wire and they're trying to secure, or better secure, the entire runway. But people, of course, are going. It is a huge complex, and people will be attempting to get over the wall, surrounded by a very high wall, all the time, we suspect, which is why there's patrols going around. And you can probably hear the shooting then. That's the same thing. As they see people approaching, then they fire in the air. So that suspension happened. We're not certain when it's likely to resume. They'll have to presumably be certain that they can control the people this time, because it has been pretty awful. We've been hearing from people saying who had tickets, even though those commercial flights didn't happen, but they had tickets. They were literally just pushed out of the way by people who had no paperwork of any description. I have heard reports that one of the reasons for this, an airline, I'm not sure which one it was, actually did just pretty much let anyone on from the runway, and that's what's caused this, because it's spread like wildfire, that if you can get through the barricades, then you can get onto the runway and then onto the planes. And of course, the Americans are now totally in control of the whole airport, or at least nominally they are, including the air traffic control section. But it was this sort of breakdown of law and order outside and inside that's caused such a delay now for the removal of people. And I think one thing that people are beginning to come to understand, and that includes the Afghans who have permission to travel to the various countries they've been working for, is that if there's growing pressure on this airlift, then there'll be priorities made, and those priorities are likely to take out the foreign nationals, and the Afghans could easily be left behind. And for many of them, they fear that that is a death sentence. And while the countries involved, Britain, the United States, but others as well, are sorrowful about that, ultimately they will prioritise their own nationals. And there could be some dreadful stories if these people have to return to their homes and the Taliban start looking for them, which most people here are convinced they're going to do. And I would just say on that point, Dermot, we've been interviewing the Taliban today, a number of fighters, and they've been saying to us that we're not going to go after anyone, that there is an amnesty and that people can carry on their lives as normal. I think that's what everyone here is waiting to see, and the international community is waiting to see, is where the Taliban really have changed their ways. I'll be honest with you, I'm somewhat sceptical.
Yeah, because we're getting these reports. Well, we heard it from the UN Secretary-General of chilling human rights abuses taking place in Afghanistan. Are you hearing anything about what's going on the streets away from the airport?
Yeah, well, just quickly on that note, Dermot, over the last days that we've been here, I have seen a lot of videos that we can't broadcast, but it's dead people, basically, who have been murdered and laid out by the Taliban, and those were either militia or people they identified as having worked for either foreign governments or the Afghan army. And we've seen this in towns and villages, not so much in the major cities. Now, as it stands today in Kabul, things are nowhere near back to normal. But as the day has progressed, more and more people have come out onto the streets. There's more traffic. Bear in mind, it was absolutely deserted only a day or so ago. And shops have been opening, but it is absolutely awash with Taliban fighters. They're everywhere. Interestingly, they were prepared to pose for our cameras and give interviews. Now that is incredible. I've never seen a change like that. I never thought I would see that, where they were quite happy to appear on television. You remember TV was banned over 20 years ago. And so they are saying and bringing this position that their leadership have tried to sell to the international community, that it is a new look, reformed Taliban, and that while they will be strict, they do want it to be a more inclusive society. Huge scepticism here by many people, certainly in the international community. But I think one of the reasons they want to do this, obviously it is 20 years further on and things have changed even for the Taliban, but also they want to not just have the support of, say, 3 countries, which I'm pretty certain it was when they last had a government here, but they would actually like their neighbours, for example, Pakistan and Russia, for example, to be supportive of them and on board and to recognise them, and for other countries as well. And you're only going to do that if you do behave responsibly and don't just start acting like you're coming from the Middle Ages, for example. And that might be their plan. The only thing I would say to that is that might be fine for the enlightened elite of the Taliban, if you like, the people who have been involved in the negotiations in Qatar. But for some of the fighters, they're very, very conservative, and they have always ruled the areas, particularly in the provinces and the regions, which they've held for really quite a long time, never really lost it to the coalition. They've always had this really hardcore position. Girls should stay at home, they don't get educated after the age of 11, and so on. Whether they'll go down that route, we don't know. Will they insist on burqas again? Most people seem to think maybe not this time, but we just don't know. And so you have these 2 things, Dermot, where we have what is going to happen in the future, the politics, the society, all the various issues. But right now we've got chaos at the airport, this huge airlift, and it is a volatile situation. It's still very dangerous here.
Stuart Ramsey, live in Kabul. Thank you.